Dumbbell triceps kickbacks suck. Have you ever heard someone say that? Well, I don't think that they suck. Like, they could be worse, I suppose, for the goal of training the triceps. But they do have a major issue. And what is the major issue? Well, we just orient ourselves. I really just drew someone's spine. Here's their upper arm, here's their forearm, here's their head. And because I'm very creative and artistically gifted, I drew an eyebrow and a face, to demonstrate that he's looking down or she's looking down. Now, if we're looking at the actual motion of the dumbbell triceps kickback, here's where it starts. Right, so what is kind of already the issue? Well, we don't even really have to get into any of the nitty-gritty physics to understand that, like, what position is this? This is like the top of a dumbbell row, right? And what do we do a dumbbell row to train? Or the tissues around the shoulder, the back primarily. So this is already an exercise where, number one, through the entirety of the motion, you're gonna have to hold the arm in this position, which is not a particularly easy place to hold your arm, given how weak you are there relative to other positions there, your back might be stronger. But what is even more the problem in this position, I think, is the fact that if you drew a line down from the dumbbell to indicate what the dumbbell is trying to do, there's pretty much no load on the elbow, right? In the same way that there wouldn't be much load on the elbow if you were just, at the top of a dumbbell press. It's not like you're actually having to do really any work. Your elbow muscles, and specifically the triceps, which cross the back of this joint, are not actually having to do anything. Now, as soon as you start to kick the dumbbell back, right, so from the bottom position now to the top position might look something like this, right? And again, here's maybe the dumbbell. The dumbbell is now falling downward this way. All right, well, now the elbow is loaded, but what else is loaded? Well, if we look at this distance right here, that is the distance at which the shoulder is being loaded. And here is the distance at which the elbow is being loaded. So now when we do have a lot of load on the triceps, we actually in fact have twice the load on the shoulder. So of all the triceps exercises you could do, this one is not at the top of the list of ones that I would recommend. In fact, of all the traditional triceps options, this would probably be as far down the list as possible. Again, really just because it's like, we're just kind of setting this exercise up for, number one, another joint to have to manage most of it, and where we're stronger and we can do a lot of work and get a lot of tension in the triceps, we have no tension in that position, again, the bottom position. And then when we're super weak at the top, both from a triceps and a shoulder perspective, the load is maximal. And then again, as I mentioned, the shoulder, at least in this position, is twice as loaded as the elbow. So what's a very simple solution? And this actually is a very simple solution. Well, what we might do is flip around, right? Because what would happen if we flipped around? Well, the first thing that I would have to do is I'd have to change the orientation of my stick figure's face. So now the face would be going this way. Oh, smiling, looking upward, lying down on a bench. And if we mimic that sort of, we'll say, most stretched position, what we can maybe do is have a dumbbell like this. In this bottom position, when we're kind of here with the dumbbells, right, we're intentionally bringing the dumbbells to the shoulders, right? So the elbows are flaring and the dumbbells are directing at the shoulders. And what does that actually mean? Well, when you look at the resistance that the dumbbell is creating, the dumbbell is going right through the shoulder. In other words, there's pretty much no resistance on the shoulder, as there basically wasn't any resistance on the elbow in the bottom position of the skull crusher, or sorry, the triceps kickback that we looked at before. So in essence, here's the distance of the shoulder. You can't even barely see it on the video how small it is, but now look at the distance to the elbow, right? And again, triceps being on the backside of this joint, they're going to pry this joint open. And now as we get to the top, much like in a dumbbell press, the dumbbells obviously stack over top of the triceps. So this ends up being really, really heavy in the bottom and pretty much really, really light to basically unloaded in the top. And so that's kind of what we would call a resistance challenge that is very much in line with, we'll say, the force production ability of the triceps. In other words, it's heavy where we're strong and it's light where we start to get really weak. And because, again, you're basically keeping the dumbbells over your shoulders the entire time, it's going to be a really triceps dominant thing. Now, what if you're someone who maybe is uncomfortable in doing this, they're difficult to coordinate, and you just don't like whatever dumbbell variation I just recommended? Well, another solution, let's go back to the kickback now, Here we are. Face is pointed downward yet again. We're smiling. And here's that shoulder position. Instead of having a dumbbell in our hands, what might we do? What might be a somewhat obvious solution to some of you? Use a cable. Because if we have a cable over here, and this becomes the load of the cable, what are you now doing? I mean, just take this whole whiteboard and turn it this way. You're doing a cable triceps extension. So if many of you are going to a gym, most gyms have dumbbells and they have cables. And if you're choosing between like a dumbbell triceps kickback and a cable extension, well, the cable extension is basically not only going to be able to load this entire range, because by the time you get here, the cable's still going to be pulling you this way, but it's also going to be much heavier where you're stronger and much lighter where you're weaker, at least if you set it up this way. Oh, and also you don't need to bend over, on the cable stack and lower the pulley to do the triceps extension. You could just raise it up higher, stand nice and close to the cable, and do the triceps extensions that way. So there are so many workarounds to this issue. Hopefully the dumbbell workaround and then the more obvious cable workaround, hopefully both of those are helpful to you, just in case you find yourself in a situation where maybe the cables are taken or maybe the dumbbells you want to take or use are taken, right? Both of those situations are perfectly practical and realistic, and especially at a busy gym time. Knowing this kind of thing and really the principles behind this thing, I think could be very helpful, not just for navigating those kinds of situations, but also just any exercise as a whole. So again, are triceps kickbacks with a dumbbell terrible? Are they going to be awful in all the ways that people potentially describe? No, but are they high up on the sort of tier list of exercise options that make sense for training the triceps? Also no, and I would recommend these at least as a starting point instead.